This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, so this meeting is being recorded. This is the meeting of the traditional Buddhist chanting class on, what is it? It's Tuesday, May 2nd. And this is, we're going to start tonight talking about the Homage to the Three Jewels chant. This will be the first of four meetings where we discuss that chant. But first, we're going to do the Great Dharani chant together. Okay, so welcome everybody. We're going to be talking about the Homage to the Three Jewels chant, and I want to try to get through some material that I prepared. Everybody can hear me okay, right? I take that because we were talking before. Okay, good. I'd like to get through some material that I prepared, but then still have a discussion. Let's see. In the second half, give subtitles a try. Why is PowerPoint trying to annoy me? Okay. So Uh, so we'll follow the usual schedule, which is the first part of the class will go from 7 to 7:35. Oh, so I didn't turn subtitles on, but do you see the subtitles there at the bottom of the screen? Okay, I think it's annoying that it's doing that, even though I tried to make it stop. But now that it's there, it might be helpful to people who are watching the video. Um, I know that is an actually quite helpful thing for many people. So I'll leave them on. Okay, so we are going to begin our discussion tonight on the subject of the Homage to the Three Jewels chant. We'll have 4 meetings on this chant, and we will tonight talk about the overall structure of the chant and the beginning section of the chant, which covers the 5 fragrances and the incense offering, which are kind of go together, fragrance and incense. There's a theme there at the beginning of the chant. The main part of the chant we'll begin discussing at our next meeting on May 16th, which is called the 7 prostrations. And on June 6th, we'll continue talking about the 7 prostrations. And then at our final meeting, we'll discuss the very end of the chant and maybe if there's some things that we haven't gotten to already by that time, which is the Great Aspiration. And this is the Great Aspiration right here, written in the classical Chinese characters. And then this is a kind of a nice translation. We solely desire that the infinite 3 jewels receive with great love and great compassion our reverent homage, filling us from within and clothing us with their divine power, and that all the beings of the Dharma realm, all together at the same time, attain the Buddha way. So if you've ever done the this chant and you didn't know what it was you were saying at the end, that's a pretty good translation of how the chant ends, which is a nice way to end a chant. Now, so this is not a particularly good way of presenting the chant, but this it's not very readable. I would say not very easy on the eyes. It's kind of a terrible thing looking at it, but it is. Now I'm clobbering the subtitles with the picture down there, but it is a good way of presenting all on one page part of the information that I want to cover, which is how the chant is structured. There's a beginning. These first 2 lines are the 5 fragrances, which we're going to talk about in just a minute, followed by the incense offering. And so if you're familiar with the chant, and we're going to do the chant at the end of the class this evening, starts out Ge Hyang, Jong Hyang, He Hyang, He Tao Hyang, He Tao Ji Jon Hyang, Guang Yang Wunde, Jubyon Bopye, Gong Yang Shiban, Muryang Bubopsum, Hon Yang Jinon, Om Bara Tobia Hum, Om Bara Tobia Hum, Om Bara Tobia Hum. So that's, my just sounding it out without any attempt to be chanting it beautifully or anything. And we're going to talk about what that means in just a minute, because these first 3 lines here, this is the focus of tonight's class. And then each of these lines that start with Ji Shim Myung Ye, these are the 7 prostrations. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And there are prostrations to Shakyamuni Buddha, all the Buddhas, the Dharma, the 4 great bodhisattvas, a bunch of saints and disciples of the Buddha, a bunch of teachers and ancestors of Buddhism, and then the Sangha, and then at the very end, part that starts with Yuon, this is the Great Aspiration. Okay, so that's the overall. Now, let me just get I kind of know the answer to this. Let me see if I can. But let me get a show, just a quick show of hands. How many people here have done this chant? I think everybody here has done this chant. Yeah, okay, all right, including John, who's hesitant to raise his hand. But now, if you've done this chant, oh yeah, so this is one thing I do want to emphasize, that usually if you've done this chant before, most people who have done it, I think I'm not overgeneralizing here, have done it because they participated in a group where the chant is done. Um, so anybody who comes to the Rockville online meditation group has done this chant, because we do it every Wednesday and every Saturday. But then if you participate in a in-person group, um, you might have done it in person. You might have done it where people have, I think everyone here, I know the answer to this question, all right, just looking at you. So sometimes people do it in a very formal way where you're standing up and doing full prostrations. Each of these 7 prostrations is a full prostration, starting from a standing position, going all the way down to the ground with your head on the ground, and then coming all the way back up again. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I want to emphasize that one of the things I'm trying to do with this class is to encourage the practice of this and other chants as a personal practice. And this is really the way that these chants, which come from Korean Buddhism, although they share a lot in common with other chanting practices that one finds in Japanese Buddhism, Vietnamese Buddhism, Chinese Buddhism, and all other forms of Buddhism. In fact, well, so in South Asia, where they practice Theravada Buddhism, the single most the one book that every Theravada Buddhist will have in their house is a chanting book, which is all in Pali. Then it'll be sounded, because no one speaks Pali. No one anywhere in the world speaks Pali, but all Theravada Buddhists have a chanting book in Pali, and it'll be sounded out, written out in whatever their local alphabet is, using the sounds. And that is very often just literally referred to as the Buddhist Bible in South Asia. And that's not uncommon. That's true anywhere in the world where Buddhism is practiced. People do chanting practice as part of their daily, personal, individual practice. And in Korea, where they sell chanting books very cheaply, I've shown pictures of it in some of the other classes. I don't think I have a slide showing a picture of it today, but in Korea they sell these chanting books for like $250 that have all the chants that we're going to be talking this whole year of classes and many more in it. And it says the subtitle to these books is chanting practice that you can do even by yourself. It's written out in Korean, even by yourself. So anyway, this chant is let me go to the next slide. Let's see. So this is enough with this. Okay. So this is kind of getting into what I'm starting to talk about now. So all Buddhists chant. Chanting is a universal practice in Buddhism, and all Buddhists take refuge in the 3 jewels. And that's true whether a person is a Tantric Buddhist or a Zen Buddhist or a Pure Land Buddhist or a Theravada Buddhist, or even if you're a secular, atheist, materialist Buddhist who doesn't believe in anything. Okay. So Doug Smith, I don't know if people are familiar with Doug Smith. I learned about Doug Smith from Tom, who's not here, but he suggested that to me. Or actually, I think Elizabeth might have mentioned it too. He said, "Hey, Tom likes this channel, secular." So Doug Smith is a secular Buddhist who has a very interesting YouTube channel, lots of videos on it. One of the very first videos he posted when he started doing this was, "What are the 3 refuges?" So, like I said, even secular, atheist, materialist Buddhists who don't believe in anything take refuge in the 3 jewels. And so let me just skip to the 3rd paragraph. I'll get back to the 2nd paragraph. Why is that? Why do secular atheist Buddhists who don't believe in anything take refuge in the three jewels? Because that's what makes you a Buddhist. Um, if you can call yourself a secular atheist materialist and leave off the Buddhist part. But if you want to add Buddhist on there, then you have to take refuge in the three jewels. And so you don't have to do that. But I think a lot of people who, and I'm not, I don't want to antagonize secular atheist Buddhists or any other kind of Buddhists, but uh, many people from with many different points of view and many different worldviews are very attracted to the teachings of Buddhism. And they invariably try to take the teachings of the Buddhism and fit it to their own worldview. I mean, that's just inevitable. I do that. Everybody does that. Um, and and the Buddha realized that that's what people would do. And so he taught in many different ways to many different people at different times and places. Um, and uh, but everybody, if you say you want to be my student, take refuge. You have to take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And so, um, uh, one way of practicing that, what does it mean to take refuge? Well, taking refuge, you can use that as a practice in your daily life, as a reminder. And so, one way of doing that is to do some sort of practice like reciting the Homage to the Three Jewels, or as it's called in Korea. The chant comes from Korea. Uh, English speaking Buddhists who practice Korean style Buddhism generally refer to it as homage to the three jewels. But in Korea, it's just called Yebo. And we'll get into what that means in a minute. But in all Buddhist temples throughout Korea, um, the Yebo chant is part of the daily schedule. And every morning and every evening, and Zen Master Sung San taught his students, both monastic and lay people, um, to do this practice every day. And I would say, it's not for me to say, although I am saying it. If you're a Buddhist, you should do some sort of practice like this every day, as a reminder, as a I mean, overall, well, people are busy, and also people are easily distracted. But this is a really good practice to try to do and to succeed in doing every day, I would say. Um, but a lot of times when people talk about what does it mean to take refuge, um, there's a lot of emphasis on the things that you're taking refuge in. But I think it's important to look at uh, what it is that refuge itself means. And so for that, I'm going to call upon another secular Buddhist. This is from uh, Winton Higgins. This is a link. So if you, I don't think I can click on it here. Yeah, no. But if you download these PowerPoint slides, or if you go to the recording of the YouTube video, this will be in the list of links in the description of this video. This is a nice little article posted online by this Winton Higgins, who's an author and a secular Buddhist active in Australia. And he wrote an article about Sangha essentials, creating community and bonding. And in it, he talks about what it means to take refuge. And so he starts off making a very important observation, which is that we all take refuge all the time. We're always taking refuge. Whatever it is that we structure our life around, that's what we're taking refuge in, whether it's seeking, whether it's just trying to have a career, or, seeking fame, or making sure we have money in the bank, or having an office crammed with tech, insurance policies, a snappy car, et cetera, et cetera. Or a relationship, or a network of relationships, or a family, whatever it is that we're structuring our life around, that is our refuge. And a refuge, so why do we do that? So one reason why we do that is because otherwise we don't have a life, right? Another reason why we have that is that not only are these things we structure our lives around, but they're also things that we look to support us, to comfort us, to give us meaning. And some of the things that aren't included in Winton's list here are things like ice cream, beer, Netflix, uh, playing poker, whatever. So things that we do for entertainment, for comfort, to make ourselves feel better. Um, the things that we go to when we are uh, depressed or disappointed, or also the things we go to when we're happy and we want to celebrate. Um, Basically, refuge is not only the things that you structure your life around, but they're also the things that you go to when you are whatever, when you are happy, when you are sad, that you rely on. Um, uh, and anyway, so Winton talks, Winton Higgins talks about this a little bit. Uh, that we see these refuges as refuge from the scary, unmasterable contingency of the world. Unmasterable contingency of the world, which is a phrase that Winton Higgins is borrowing from another secular Buddhist writer, a guy named Galen Strawson, who actually first used this phrase. If you click on this, when you get if you get this PowerPoint slide and you click on this link here, it'll take you to a 1992 book review that Galen Strawson wrote, in which he used this phrase. He was reviewing a collection of works by Iris Murdoch. But I think we all know what the unmasterable contingency of the world is. It's all the stuff that we can't control and that potentially messes up our life. That the things that we want to take refuge from. Ah, there's Joe. Hi, Joe. And all right, so we have things. We have things that we center our life on. We also have the things that we go to for comfort, for to make ourselves feel better. Um, uh, but they're all, as Winton points out, the trouble is that all of these refuges belong to the contingent world that we're often seeking refuge from, and so they don't work. And so this is I'll just quote. I think Winton hits this on the nail. Hits this nail on the head here. Yes. For this reason, the Buddha proposed as the centerpiece of his practice tradition three refuges that aren't like that. Nothing, no one, and no contingency can take them away from us. They're always there for us, come what may. They are our human capacity to awaken, the teaching and the practice that invokes it, and the community of our fellow Dharma practitioners, the Sangha. In short, the traditional three refuges of the Buddha, Dharma, and the Sangha. Okay, so for all of my tendency to maybe disparage secular, materialist, atheist, Buddhists who don't believe in anything, Winton has a very nice summary of both what refuge is and what we take refuge in right here in this one paragraph. This is good. I like this. Now, all right. So that brings us to, so that's what we're doing in this chat. That's what the chant is about. So I want to make sure my phone is on so I can see what time it is. Because it's 2023 and I can't tell what time it is without my phone. Okay. So this is the opening lines of the Ye Bul. And I've probably talked a little bit too much about the introduction, but these are the five fragrances. Let's look at this before we go to the. So we'll take a break in about 8 minutes. But before we get to that, let's talk about. I'm going to delay a little bit talking about exactly what Ye Bul means, but these are the Chinese characters for Ye Bul. Ye Bul. This is the Hangul for Ye Bul. And I've got this translation, ritual Buddha, is kind of a funky translation, but it's actually a somewhat literal translation. But we'll get back to this. When we chant Gehyang, Zhongyang, Hehyang, Heital Jigyeongyang, well, the word that gets repeated over and over again is hyang, which is the word for fragrance. Okay. Ge is the word for sila, or discipline, or sometimes translated as precepts. This is the second paramita. Um, this is discipline. This is refraining from doing harm to others. Basically, is the most important meaning of Gye, or sila, or discipline. The second fragrance. So this is the fragrance of our discipline, which sounds like a song by Nirvana or something. I don't know, but the second is Jonghyang, is the fragrance of our samadhi. The third one is the fragrance of our wisdom. Hyang, see, that's yeah, Hyehyang. The fourth one is the fragrance of our moksha, or our liberation. So these are all, I've got it over here in this little box here, kind of a key to the Chinese character, the how we pronounce, and for each of these, how we pronounce or write out the Sanskrit, which is more or less how it's pronounced by English speakers. Sila. Ge is the pronunciation used in the chant. This is the Sino-Korean pronunciation. This is Sila, Samadhi, Prajna, and Moksha, which are all Sanskrit terms, all Buddhist technical terms that can mean a lot of different things. And I'm going to talk more about what they mean in this specific context. It's kind of interesting in this chant. But Sila is precepts, Samadhi is samadhi. Samadhi is what people want to, expect to, and rarely do experience when we practice meditation. Samadhi means, being completely at ease and totally at one with whatever it is that you are doing, a mind that is clear and completely aware. Prajna is wisdom, whatever wisdom is. Moksha is liberation, whatever liberation is. And these are the first four fragrances. And then the fifth fragrance is the knowledge of liberation, or liberated knowledge, which is the fifth fragrance. And where do these fragrances come? Where does this list of 5 things that have these wonderful smells come from? And I'll talk about that at the second half of the class, right at the beginning, after the break. But then all of these, this second part, after the fragrances are listed, this part here, and I don't have a really good, this is a very kind of literal character by character translation of what's being chanted. Doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense, or I'll talk more about a meaningful English translation of this. But this is where we chant Guangyang Wunde Ju Byon Bopge Gongyang Shibang Wuryang Wubopsong. This is basically saying we offer these fragrances to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, right? This is homage to the 3 jewels chant. This is part of the 3 jewels part. And then to kind of put a period on that offering, we recite the incense offering mantra, which is, the title of the mantra is Honhyang Jinon, and the mantra itself is Om Bada Tobia Hom. And it's usually the case that when you recite a mantra, especially when it's part of a chant, you recite the title of the mantra once, and then you recite the mantra itself 3 times, or maybe more. So I do want to stop in just a few minutes. Right now I can see if people have questions, or there's anything you think I got wrong or left out, or any comments that anybody might have at this point. Joe's got something. Go ahead, Joe. Yeah, go ahead. Unmute yourself. You're muted. Okay, there you go.
I apologize for being late.
No problem.
Time and saw, like, oh my God. Sorry about that.
Right.
But I just want to ask one more time. What did you say moksha was the paramita of?
Yeah. Oh, no. So, okay. So only one. Yeah. Sila is the second paramita. Okay. samadhi one could associate with the fifth paramita, which is meditation. And prajna, of course, is the sixth paramita. Moksha is not a paramita. Okay. So this is a different, Buddhism has lots of lists. Okay. This is not this is and often things on one list show up on another list. Um, just to keep us on our toes. But so several things on this is the list, and we'll talk about what this is the list of the 5 attributes of the Buddha's body. It's also the list of what it does correspond to is the aggregates, the skandhas. These 5 things are the purified, the pure, supramundane, undefiled form of the 5 skandhas. So we'll talk about that in the second half of this show tonight. But that's a good question. So moksha is just moksha. Moksha is a term that doesn't belong to Buddhists. Hindus have moksha. Jains have moksha. It means liberation. So it's a more generic Sanskrit term for enlightenment. It's often not the term that Buddhists use for enlightenment, but sometimes it is in this case. For liberation, not necessarily for enlightenment as a Buddha. Looks like Elizabeth is thinking about something. I can tell.
I looked up the character for samadhi, and
Uh-huh.
it did not say samadhi. It just said it said stable, or it said stable, or to fix, or to decide.
Right. So you didn't look it up in a Buddhist dictionary then, probably. And that's one of the ways to tell whether or not you have a really good Chinese dictionary, because for a character like that, it'll have, as it lists all the different definitions, there'll be one that says, Buddhist, and then next to it, it'll say samadhi. But you might have to spend $40 or $50 to get a dictionary that good, or upgrade your phone app if you use a phone app that has a dictionary, a Chinese dictionary on it. Anyway, are we getting close to, so it's 7:36. Let's take a 5-minute break, and we'll come back and we'll talk more about the 5 fragrances, and have some discussion if people have things that you want to discuss. Okay, so break is over. Everyone should come back now. Hi, Deborah. Elizabeth. So I'm gonna keep going at this point. Let's see. Slideshow, current slide. There. Now, oh, what is TA enable? I do not want to get involved in this right now. I'm going to come back to this. Okay. So the yay in Yable is a very, very, very interesting character. It is the character that most people have probably heard of it as Li, which is the means principle. It's if we'll talk about that in a little bit. But the 5 fragrances. This is also very interesting. But so these are the 5 attributes of the Tathagata's body. They are the 5 skandhas in their purified or supramundane form. The Loko Tara Sam. Anyway. And so this is a very basic idea in Buddhism. This is an idea shared with both Mahayana and Theravada Buddhists. And it's the skandhas in their purified form. So the Buddha, a fully enlightened Buddha, still has 5 skandhas, but they're now in their purified form. So the body, so the skandhas are form, feelings, perceptions, impulses, consciousness. Or there's many different translations, but that's the one that I'm most comfortable with because that's the translation in the Heart Sutra that I memorized many years ago. So whenever I try to think of what are the 5 skandhas, I think form, feelings, perceptions, impulses, consciousness, because I can rattle that off. But there's lots of different translations of these. But the form skandha, or the body, the physical body skandha, in its purified form is sila, or discipline. This means that in its pure form, our bodies do not perform any unwholesome actions. Feelings in their purified form are samadhi. So when our feelings are purified, they do not disturb the mind or the body, and therefore you're in samadhi. When you're in samadhi, what does that mean? When you're in samadhi, it means that you don't have any feelings that are bothering you. Basically, that's a quick and dirty, and not that inaccurate definition of samadhi. When our perceptions are purified, we see everything as it really is, and that's wisdom. That's prajna. So this is the purified form of our perceptions is prajna, wisdom. When our impulses are purified, then there is nothing to stop us. There's no reason to not simply act on all of our impulses, so we are free. This is freedom. This is liberation. This is moksha. And when our consciousness is completely purified, I'm speaking hypothetically here, I don't know any of this stuff because, I haven't attained any of these states. Let's be clear about that. But when our consciousness is completely purified, then you see that you have always been free. And this is knowledge of liberation, or liberated consciousness. And these are called the undefiled aggregates. And this is what we're chanting at the beginning of the Homage to the 3 Jewels. This is more on Lee. When did I go back? Let's see. Anyway. Okay. So references to the undefiled aggregates can be found in the writings of Nagarjuna, Vasubandhu, and this sutra. I'm going to put a link to this sutra. This is really an interesting sutra. It's very long, but it's got some really good stuff in it. If you like sutras. But it can also be found in the writings of Bodhidharma and in the Platform Sutra. Now, not all, there's many, actually many, there's different versions of the Platform Sutra. But sometimes this part right here is included in the Platform Sutra and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's attributed to Bodhidharma and it's not completely clear that that's a legitimate attribution. But and since I've rattled on too long about what refuges are and what refuge is, let's get right down to this part right here. This is the part that's important to us. Burning incense doesn't mean ordinary material incense, but the incense of the intangible Dharma, which drives away filth, ignorance, and evil deeds with its perfume. There are 4 kinds of such Dharma incense. The first is the incense of morality. So this is Red Pine's translation, and he's translating Silla as morality. Second is the incense of meditation. Here he's translating samadhi as meditation. So translating wisdom as prajna is usually safe. Moksha is liberation. Fourth is the incense of liberation, which means severing the bonds of ignorance. And fifth is the incense of perfect knowledge, which I forgot to put in bold, which means being always aware and nowhere obstructed. All right. So this is probably where we can talk about it if anybody has anything to say about it. I don't have anything really prepared tonight to talk about like the history of the homage to the 3 jewels. But once you go into the history of the homage to the 3 jewels, you find that there have been chants like this for centuries and centuries, and they get reworked and things get added and things get taken out. Actually, the form that we have the chant in is a fairly abbreviated form. But somewhere along the line, someone decided to put these 5 fragrances in, and that was pretty early on in the evolution of this chant, and it stuck. I don't think there's any forms of this chant that don't include this. But when they did include it, they were quite likely taking it from the Platform Sutra or some version of the Platform Sutra that they were taking it from. All right, so that's the 5 fragrances. And then, so anyway, I do want to give more opportunity for discussion. We can go back and talk about what Yay Bull actually means, which I think is pretty interesting. So the rest of the section of the chant that we're going to be talking that we need to cover this time is just the oh yeah, here's the translation that so once you recite the 5 fragrances, then you say these fragrances are like terraces of radiant clouds pervading the entire Dharma realm. We offer them to the immeasurable Buddhas, Dharmas, and Sanghas of the 10 directions. So that's what we say. So and then we recite the incense offering mantra Om Bada Tobyaham. And so I would love to go into more about some of this. I've got some slides prepared, but I'm actually kind of tired of listening to myself. I'd love to hear someone else say something. You know, ask something, say something. We were talking about gardening tools earlier. We probably shouldn't go back into that discussion, although there was a very interesting discussion about gardening tools earlier, and you can actually, yeah, gardening tools are good. But questions or so does anybody ever do this chant on their own? So I think it's a great chant to do as part of my own personal practice, and I think that if you do this chant, the Heart Sutra, and the Great Dharani, and then if you add in either Kwanzaa Bosal chanting or Jijang Bosal chanting, if you so you can do those if you like have a recording you can do. I think it takes maybe 20 minutes to do all those. If you know them by heart, and you're like me, always in a hurry, you can do them in 10 minutes. Um, which I don't necessarily recommend that, but at the same time, um, uh, it's better to do chanting in a hurry than to not do it because you don't have time, I would say. And also, I mean, Zen Master Sung San often encouraged people to chant fast as a it it, it can be less mindful than chanting slowly, but sometimes it's more mindful. If you chant fast, at least for me, when I try to chant really fast, I get tripped up and I forget where I am, or I get messed up. It's sometimes it's a little easier for me to remember where I am, especially if I'm doing it completely by heart. Um, but even though I've been doing these chants for decades, I have an old chant book. This is Quan on it, or Kuan Yin, that I usually use when I'm doing my daily practice. Um, let's see. Yeah, so this translation, which I really like, I fixed it up a little bit actually, but uh, is from this book, Essential Compendium for Buddhists. So this is not what I was referring to earlier when I was talking about how Buddhists will generally have like a chanting book at home. This is a comprehensive ritual text from the beginning of the 20th century, gathering various sutras, worship liturgies, and dharani essential to Korean Buddhist ceremonies. So if someone was to come out with a little chanting book, you know, to encourage people to do chanting, um, all of those chants should be found somewhere in this book. So this is a lot more than what the normal lay Buddhist or even the normal monk or nun would be using on a daily basis in their chanting practice. But anything that they are using is probably in here somewhere. And if it's not, where did it come from? What are they doing? They're doing unapproved chants, possibly, which
Ah,
I do lots of unapproved chants, but um, okay. So I'm going to go back and talk about what Yebo actually means. Who wants to hear what Yebo actually means? I hope you do, because that's what we're going to do now. All right. So um, Bull means Buddha. Okay. So what does Yebo mean? Turns out that Ye is like probably the most common character in the Analects of Confucius. Um, and it's not only the most common character in the Analects of Confucius, it is the most common Buddhist term in Dao Sheng's commentary on the Lotus Sutra. This is, if you read, so I don't know who here is from, I know that Elizabeth is familiar with Dao Sheng's commentary on the Lotus Sutra. Is anybody else familiar with Dao Sheng's? So I'll put it's actually, I have a link to it. It's a book that you can buy, but it's also it's a book that is based, the English translation of it is based on a PhD thesis that you can download for free. But anyway, this character, let's see what Charles Muller has to say. So first of all, this is from the Analects of Confucius. Yoji, who is one of Confucius's most important students, said, in the actual practice of propriety, flexibility is important. This is what the ancient kings did so well. Both the greater and the lesser used flexibility. Yet there are occasions when this does not apply. If you understand flexibility and use it, but don't structure yourself with propriety, things won't go well. So here, Ye, the Ye in Ye Bull, is being translated as propriety. And this is what Charles Muller, who is one of the world's leading experts on Korean Buddhism and Buddhism in general. Propriety is the English rendition of the Chinese li, and this is the character. This is a word that also has a wide range of meaning in classical Chinese thought and is difficult to translate in a single word. Its most basic meaning is that of ritual or ceremony, and that's more the sense that, so when I translated this before at the beginning of this presentation, I said ritual Buddha, and that's kind of literally what Yebul means. And again, just to remind you, I kind of said this before. In English, we refer to this chant as the homage to the three jewels. In Korean Buddhism, it's just called Yebul. And obviously, Yebul doesn't have enough syllables in it to be translated into English as homage to the three jewels. And so we'll get, so it means something about ritual or ceremony. Buddha ritual or ritual Buddha, referring to all sorts of rituals that permeated early East Asian society. And he goes on. This is good to read. I'm going to skip ahead. These are some more places in the Analects of Confucius where the term Li or Ye shows up. When Confucius entered the Grand Temple, he asked about everything. Someone said, "Who said Confucius is a master of ritual? He enters the Grand Temple and asks about everything." When Confucius heard this, he said, "This is the ritual." So asking about everything is the ritual. This is very Zen. There's a lot of really Zen stuff in the Analects of Confucius. And in fact, Zen koans are basically modeled on, a lot of people would disagree with me for saying this, but Zen koans are inspired by and modeled on the Analects of Confucius, which are in dialogue form, very, often very, well, obtuse, I would say, but worth looking into. Okay, so another time when, this is about another very interesting character, Ren, which is the character for humaneness, which I'm gonna, and then down here, this last quote is about propriety and humaneness. So Confucius said, as we say in English, Confucius said, "Is humaneness far away? If I aspire for humaneness, it is right here." Also quite Zen, I would say. Yuan Wan asked about the meaning of humaneness. This is another thing. The master said, "To completely overcome selfishness and to keep propriety is humaneness. If for a full day you can overcome selfishness and keep to propriety, everything in the world will return to humaneness. Does humaneness come from oneself or from others?" And so this is actually a kind of a controversial. And if Charles Muller's translations and commentary on the Analects of Confucius are online, and I linked to it at the see, yeah, right here in the previous slide. This goes right to it. And he has a nice comment on this one saying, most people try to translate this so that it doesn't come out saying that one person by themselves can return the world, the entire world, to humaneness. And Charles Muller said, people don't want to translate it that way, but that's what it says. And so that's the way Charles Muller translates it. If one person, and again, I would say this is, what does it mean to say something is very Zen? It's a stupid thing to say. I shouldn't say it, but I'm going to say it anyway. This is very Zen. If one person can, for one day, completely overcome selfishness and keep to propriety, then the whole world will return to humaneness. That's the final line in the Homage to the Three Jewels. Our great aspiration, our sole desire is for everyone all together, all at once, to attain Buddhahood. Anyway, so this is all talking about what is Yebul. So this word Ye has all kinds of meaning. Skip this slide. So this is getting to Dao Sheng. Dao Sheng talking about this character, Li. Not just Dao Sheng talking about the character Li, but Young Ho Kim. This is a link to it. This is a link to his PhD thesis, but and this is a wonderful book. If you're interested in the Lotus Sutra, This is one of the best things that you can read. But at the same time, it's not that, I don't know, what would you say, Elizabeth? How easy is it to read, to just pick up and read if you're interested in the Lotus Sutra? I mean, it's not impossible, right?
In some places, he has some very short, to the point summaries, but it's not easy for the most part.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Lotus Sutra. Every once in a while, it makes sense. But it's definitely worth the effort, I think. Anyway, so so I'll get to the point. Yebul means Buddhist worship. Basically, is a probably the best literal, accurate translation of what Yebul means. And Zen Master Sung San had enough sense to not say that's what he was asking people to do. Now, worship in Buddhism, so worship is an English word. So that's just using an English word to try to translate something in Chinese and or Korean. But, and we'll get into this as we talk about the 7 prostrations. First of all, prostrations. Yeah, you're bowing down to the Buddha. You're bowing down to the Sangha. You're bowing down to the Dharma. You're bowing down to the 4 great Bodhisattvas. You're bowing down to all the great disciples of the Buddha. You're bowing down to all of the ancestors and the teachers of Buddhism. Yeah. It's kind of like worship. You say, and it, yeah. And so that's pretty much what Korean Buddhists have in mind when they say Yebul. Even though Korean Buddhists also have in mind that this word Ye has all kinds of interesting, subtle, important, profound, philosophical, religious implications, which is probably another reason why they use it. It sounds cool. It's a character that every person who grows up in Korea, Japan, Vietnam, and of course in China is familiar. I mean, they're familiar at least by exposure to this word and to this concept, and it was even back in the time of Confucius, it was associated with what you do in a temple, right? Confucius went into the temple and he asked about propriety. And somebody said, I thought Confucius was an expert in propriety, an expert in Li, or Ye, as it's pronounced in Korean. He's supposed to be an expert in Ye. Why is he asking everybody questions about it? And Confucius said, because that is, what Ye is. That's what you should be doing in a temple, is asking questions about everything. Let's see. Oh yeah, it's interesting to look at if you. Oh yeah, one thing that I did was I looked at different incense offering mantras. There are quite a few that you could find. One of the interesting things about Korean Buddhists and their use of Chinese characters is that they use a slightly different form of the characters for mantra. And it's not just Korean Buddhists that do this, like Korean Buddhists, Japanese Buddhists, Vietnamese Buddhists, and Chinese Buddhists sometimes just, kind of use a different form. Zen Master Sung San actually he would sometimes use different forms of characters. I'm not sure if that was like, I'm not sure why he did, but sometimes he used different characters than what I would expect. And all I know is just, very standard classical Chinese characters. But anyway, if you look for, this is the way Korean Buddhists write out the phrase incense. This is offering incense mantra. So the word for mantra in East Asian Buddhism is Jinon, or so in Chinese it's called Shingon, or not Chinese, Japanese is called Shingon. So if you've ever heard of Shingon Buddhism, right? Anybody ever heard of the Shingon Buddhism in Japan? So people will often say, "Oh, Shingon Buddhism, that's like the Japanese version of Tantric Buddhism, right?" Um, which is kind of true in a way. But Shingon literally means mantra. So Shingon Buddhism is a mantra Buddhism. And so, and this leads to, this is one of the things that can lead to a certain amount of confusion and strange ideas about mantras. Some Buddhists, esoteric Buddhists, Tantric Buddhists, Vajrayana Buddhists, Tibetan Buddhists, Shingon Buddhists, treat mantras. As I was doing some research on incense offering mantras, I found people who, of course, people say all kinds of things online. If you ever read about Buddhism online, it's a very bad idea. But at the same time, if you're willing to wade through some stuff, and if you're actually also, so this person was basically saying that, oh, here's a incense offering mantra, but you can only use it if you've had the right initiation and permissions, from your guru. It's an incense offering mantra. You light a stick of incense. You want to do a little, a nice little Buddhist ritual. Light your incense before you meditate. It's a nice thing to do. It's a good thing to do. I think it's like saying, oh, you can't light incense unless you've had the proper, permission from your guru. But then he was very quick to add. He said, that's how it is in my tradition, because actually the particular incense offering mantra, which is not on this list, it is used by a lot of people throughout Asia, who don't have permission from anybody, who just know that it's an incense offering mantra that they like to do when they light incense, which let me see, I got some nice pictures of Buddhists. Yeah, here's one. There's an incense offering, right? That's some serious incense. And here's another, this is some serious incense offering, and so now this is these two pictures are obviously in a group in some sort of very formal ceremony, but we're not what?
We're not seeing them.
You're not seeing what?
Incense pictures.
Let's see. Can you see my screen? Let's see.
It's the additional 4 short ones, including ours, and 1 long.
You're not seeing, what do you see right now on the screen?
Your screen about the other ones that you found, the other short ones.
Really? What? So right now I'm displaying the slide number H3J, which stands for Homage to the Three Jewels, 0.9.
0.12.
0.12. What are you seeing, John?
0.9.
0.9.
So it has a picture of incense offering on the.
Okay. Yeah. So you might be lagging. You might be stuck or so. So sometimes the it's the mysteries of TCP. Probably you're obviously you're hearing me. What's being displayed on the screen is not syncing up. I'm sorry.
Right. No, and your video is working fine.
Yeah, that's bizarre. Deborah, do you see H3J.9 on your screen? And Elizabeth also? Okay, all right, good. So I'm sorry. It is, the mysteries of the internet and transmit control protocol. Anyway, so like I was saying, when you see people so the pictures that you're not seeing, Joe, are pictures of people in big ceremonies with big, like a handful of sticks of incense, and that are all lit and are actually burning, and they're being placed up on some sort of altar as in a large group of people in a ceremony. Oh, but I mean, I like to burn incense, when I do meditation. Sometimes I use incense to time my meditation. Um, anyway, sorry for the problems with the presentation. All right, so now I'm back again to slide 12. And so these are just some of the different mantras. Actually, the mantra that is used in Korean Buddhism, I have not been able to find much evidence of its use as an incense offering mantra outside of Korean Buddhism. These are all mantras from Chinese, and there's a lot of overlap between Chinese and Tibetan Buddhism a lot of times. So most of these actually have the Tibetan script along with the Chinese characters and some sort of Romanized version of the. But the reason I put this up here is just because even though this particular mantra, the one that we do, Om Bara Tobia Om, which I've included in the list down here as one of the short mantras, even though it isn't particularly, as far as I know, a well-known outside of Korean Buddhism, incense offering mantras are very standard part of Buddhist practice. So now it is like 8:13, and I do want us to actually do the chant together that we've been discussing. Does anybody have any questions or anything? Okay, so let me just quickly find the chant. I've got it here somewhere. Let me see. Is this the right one? No. All right. I should have had this a little better marked down. Yep. Okay, good. Okay, sorry for the delay. I'm going to share my screen now, and we'll do the homage to the three jewels together, and that'll be the end.
삼계도사 지심기명예 시방삼세 제망차례 상주 일체 달마야중 지심기명예 대지문수 사리보사 대행보현보사 대비관세음 보살 대원본존 지장보살 마하산 지심기명예 영산당시 수불루처 십태제자 십육성 오백성덕수성 내지 천이백 제다란 무량성중 지심기명예 성공동진구바해동 역대전동 제대조사 천하정사 일체미진수 제대 선지식 지심기명예 시방삼세 제망차례 상주 일체 승가야중 유원무진삼보 대자대비 수화정예명훈가비력 원공법계제중생 자타 일시 성불교
Thanks, everybody. Been great to
Thanks,
see
Bert.
you, and hope everyone is doing well. Has a great evening, week, whatever. Any closing thoughts or anything anyone wants to add or say? No? Okay, well, save it
Thank
for
you.
next time. You're welcome. Thanks for coming. Bye, everybody.
Bye.